Alright, hello. So this is going to be sort of a Spiral Abyss guide. So let's just get right into it immediately. So for this Spiral Abyss, it is very obvious that this is very difficult. This is a very difficult Spiral Abyss for, at least from what I've seen, a large majority of people, especially in Chamber 1. Chamber 1 seems to be the half that is extremely difficult for most people to complete, not just in general, but just to complete in a good enough time to get full stars. So there are some teams that I've tested to the point where I can confidently say which teams will for sure perform really well in this. So we'll just go ahead and get into it. So first team, automatically Hyperbloom. If you have a Hyperbloom team, Hyperbloom is definitely going to be really useful in this chamber, especially because, not just because of this part, but mainly because of the Drake and especially the, Simon. So having Dendro and Electro makes dealing with this guy a lot easier, but also you could just run solo Electro if you wanted to, or like you just only run like a certain element in Electro. You at the very least need Electro of some sort, and you need a bow character to deal with the Drake. So automatically I usually use Yelan. Currently for Hyperbloom I also use Raiden Shogun. You can also use Kuki Shinobu. Both work just fine if you level them to 90 and use them on their EM builds. They do quite literally the same amount of damage depending on your EM builds. It's literally the same, it just depends on who you have. Now the other thing though is that Raiden's technically is a bit faster because her skill procs every 0.9 seconds I think, and Kuki's I think it's either 1.2 seconds or 1.5 seconds. I have to double check and I'll put it in the notes in the video. But Kuki's is a little bit slower than Raiden's in producing Hyperblooms, so Raiden's will technically speaking produce slightly more, but I don't think it's significant enough to where it's like one is like a super huge winner. Like you could pick either or and it'll be just fine. So in my case, I personally just prefer Raiden just because the main thing I think rather for using Raiden over Kuki for Hyperbloom is the way that her skill works, in that you can trigger it once and you can kind of just leave it alone. You don't have to worry too much about having to swap back in and use her skill again. Whereas with Kuki Shinobu, I even have her at like at high constellations to where she basically has like permanent uptime technically with her skill, where it's like her skill basically matches her cooldown. But that still does mean that I have to swap in and keep in mind that her skill is going to run out at some point. And while technically it's a similar case with Raiden, it's a little bit more tedious with Kuki in a way. I don't really know how to properly explain it, but I feel like it makes sense with what I'm trying to say. So these two in the first half are like my default go-tos, and then the rest is really just depends on how I feel in general and also just what I want to run for second half. So for second half, generally what I ran, so there's a few teams you can actually do in second half. Second half is actually relatively flexible in what you can do. So you could do some sort of national team. Literally, and I literally was able to do this with like Zincho, Bennett, Zhongli, and Kazuha, even though usually you would probably use Sucrose in that sort of way if you're using Zincho as like your Hydra unit, but I was still able to do it with Kazuha, just messing around. So like, yeah, you can literally just slap any Hydro, Bennett, Zhongling in like an anima unit like Kazuha, Sucrose, even Heijo. I tried it with Heijo before. I actually almost got it, but I didn't succeed. But I think if you have a well-built Heijo, mine's only level 80, barely built, but like he was still able to almost do it like consistently. So if you have a decently well-built Heijo, level 90, yada yada yada, you could probably complete it just fine as well. So yeah, any national team works fine here. Another one is Freeze. I personally just recently got Shunha. So you can use Shunha. Obviously you can use other cryo units like really want to go a bit more offensive. And let's say you have Kokomi or Barbara in your healer slot for Hydro. Obviously you could do Rosaria, you could do Kaya, you could also do Diona. And then the last team, automatically Bloom with Nilou, 100%. Nilou Bloom is really effective for the second half. As you can see, there's 3 waves of enemies and they're relatively spread out, but you can tell that this second half is a little bit more AoE focused, and it's definitely in the leverage for Nilou, especially because she just got her rerun, and same with Nahida. So yeah, overall very strong for Nilou Bloom, and I'll show it in the gameplay in a second. But yeah, this team right here, really strong. I personally prefer using Nahida in Nilou Bloom. You can opt to take out Nahida and do like Traveler and Kale, or like you can take out Kokomi, swap in like, you know, more offensive second Hydro slot, and then use like Yaoyao. Yaoyao is actually a character I personally want to highlight because I think she's actually a relatively useful unit in this abyss, especially if you're somebody who maybe has a decently well-built Yaoyao already, or if you don't really want to pull for Baiju, but you want to sort of have another option for a healer, especially in this abyss where Hyperbloom is very highly prioritized. And I mean, it's a team that's been prioritized in a lot of abysses, but especially in this one, I feel like first half really incentivizes players to choose Hyperbloom to effectively deal, especially with this first chamber, and then be able to carry on in the second and third chambers. So I feel like Yaoyao is a really nice flex support slot in this case, because like, for example, I was able to do like a run with double hydro like this with like Yaoyao as my Denjo, and like it was so bare minimum, but like it got the job done, and then I just let Nilou do the rest in the second half. So you know, stuff like that I could also, you know, I have the option also to do. So in this first half, I'm going to go ahead and do Alhaitham Hyperbloom with Yaoyao as a demonstration here, and then second half we'll just do Nilou Bloom, just to keep it straightforward. And yeah, and then now it's just going to be onto the gameplay.
The scribe's work is simple, which is exactly why I took the position.
Gotcha. Game's up. You're out.
Process of elimination.
There is no escape. Here comes the catch.
Here you are. Well,
These are about to get dicey. Shine down. Don't be scared. Everyone hold hands. All eyes on me. A fresh maneuver. Allow me. I gotta balance. Hey. Share my knowledge. Hold the line. Draw my strength. Exterminate. Refuge. With the waves. Everyone hold hands. Temple of Wisdom. Propagate. Rest and rebuild. Here. Scatter. Allow me. All eyes on me. Covenant of the deep. A fresh maneuver. I gotta get this way for you. Bring forth. A minute's memory. Dance with the waves. There is no escape. Game's up. Fun's over. Gotcha.
Deprat. Here you are. Well,
Illusion shattered. Busted. Here comes the catch. Go get it, you black. You're done. Exterminate! Patience. Temple of Wisdom. Bring refuge.
We'll meet again.
That hurt all my strength.
Bloom as the flowers in Guravad!
Propagate. All eyes on me.
Goodbye. But we'll meet again.
Rest and rebuild.
The eternal